Folks ask me sometimes about the difference between a story and a legend. A story is something that happened. A legend is something that matters. This is both. I'm Reverend Samuel Hutchins. I'm 72 years old now, and my hands shake when I hold the Bible. But my memory is clear. Clear as the spring water that runs down from those mountains west of Settlers Ridge. I was there. I saw what happened in the winter of 1873. I saw a father sell his daughter to pay a debt. And I saw what came after. What came after changed everything I thought I knew about justice, about mercy, and about what it means to be family. This is the story of Clara Brennan and the man who bought her freedom by giving her his name. But before I tell you about the selling, I need to tell you about the dying, because that's where it started. The fever came to Settlers Ridge in late October. It started in the lumber camps up north. The men brought it down with the timber shipments. By the first week of November, half the mill workers were sick. By the second week, some were dying. Clara's husband was named James Brennan. He was 26 years old. He worked the big saw at Morrison's mill, down by the river where the water runs fast and cold. He was a good man, quiet, steady, the kind who showed up early and stayed late. He'd married Clara 2 years before. She was 22 then, dark-haired and serious, with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin. They had a small house near the mill, just 2 rooms, but it was theirs. James had plans. He wanted to save enough to buy land, maybe start a small farm, raise chickens, plant an orchard. He talked about it in the evenings while Clara mended his shirts. Then the fever took him. It started with a cough, just a small thing. He said it was nothing. Sawdust in his lungs, he said, happened all the time. But 3 days later he couldn't stand. His skin burned. His eyes went glassy. Clara put cold rags on his forehead and tried to get him to drink water. He pushed it away. The doctor came once. He shook his head, said to keep him comfortable, said there wasn't much else to do. The fever would break or it wouldn't. It didn't. James died on a Thursday morning. November 6th. Clara was sitting beside the bed holding his hand. She'd been there all night. He opened his eyes once, looked at her, and tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Then he was gone. Clara sat there for a long time after. She didn't cry. She just held his hand and watched the rain run down the window. She was 7 months pregnant with his child. Clara's father was Thomas Brennan, 52 years old, thick in the middle, thin on top. He'd been a decent man once, or so people said, but that was before Clara's mother died, before the drinking started, before the gambling. He lived in a room above Henderson's general store. He did odd jobs when he could get them, swept floors, hauled freight, fixed wagon wheels. He owed money to half the town. When James died, Thomas came to the funeral. He stood in the back of the church, didn't speak to Clara, just watched. After they put James in the ground, Thomas walked Clara home through the rain. "You can't stay in that house," he said. Clara didn't answer. She was looking at the river. The water was high from the rain, fast and brown. "The mill owns it," Thomas said. "They'll want it back. For the next worker." "I know," Clara said. Thomas cleared his throat. "You could come stay with me until the baby comes." Clara looked at him. His eyes slid away. "There's not much room," he said. "But we'd manage." "All right," Clara said, because she didn't have anywhere else to go. She moved into her father's room the next day. 1 room, 1 narrow bed, a chair, a table, a stove that barely worked. Thomas slept on the floor. Clara took the bed. She lay there at night and listened to him snore. She put her hands on her belly and felt the baby move. She tried not to think about James, but he was everywhere, in the way the rain sounded, in the empty space beside her, in the future that had died with him. The banker came 2 weeks later. His name was Mr. Whitmore. He wore a black suit and carried a leather folder. He knocked on the door at noon. Thomas answered. "Mr. Brennan," Whitmore said, "we need to discuss your account." Thomas went pale. "I'm working on it." "You've been working on it for 6 months. Whitmore opened the folder. "You owe the bank $200. The payment was due in September. I know, I just need a little more time. We've given you time. Whitmore looked past Thomas at Clara. She was sitting at the table, peeling potatoes. Her belly was large now. She didn't look up. I'm sorry about your son-in-law, Whitmore said to Clara. He was a good worker. Clara nodded, kept peeling. Whitmore turned back to Thomas. The bank needs payment by the end of the month. $200, or we'll take action. What kind of action? Thomas asked. We'll seize whatever assets you have, and if that's not enough, we'll pursue other remedies. Thomas's face was gray. I don't have $200. Then I suggest you find it. Whitmore closed the folder. End of the month, Mr. Brennan. That's 4 weeks from today. He left. Thomas closed the door and leaned against it. Clara looked up from her potatoes. How much do you really owe? Thomas didn't answer. Papa, how much? More than 200, he said quietly. How much more? 300, maybe 350, I'm not sure. Clara set down the knife. Her hands were shaking. How did you owe that much? Thomas slid down the door until he was sitting on the floor. He put his head in his hands. Cards, he said. I thought I could win it back. I thought I could fix it. Clara stared at her father. This man who'd walked her mother's casket to the grave, who'd given her away at her wedding, who'd held her when she was small and told her she was safe. What are you going to do? She asked. Thomas looked up at her. His eyes were red. I don't know, he said. But that was a lie. He already knew. The next 3 weeks were hard. Thomas tried to borrow money. He went to everyone he knew, the storekeeper, the blacksmith, the men he played cards with. Nobody would lend to him. His credit was no good. He tried to sell what little he had, a pocket watch, a saddle, a rifle his father had left him. He got $23 for all of it. $23. He needed 200. Clara watched him grow thinner, more desperate. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping. He'd sit at the table all night, staring at nothing. She tried to help. She took in sewing. But her fingers were swollen and her eyes hurt. She could barely hold a needle. She made $4 in 2 weeks. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. One night, Thomas came home late. Clara was already in bed. She heard him stumble on the stairs. He sat down at the table, didn't light the lamp. Clara, he said in the darkness. You awake? Yes. I need to ask you something. Clara waited. The baby kicked. She put her hand on the spot. There's a man, Thomas said, up in the mountains, runs a ranch. He's looking for help. What kind of help? Housekeeping, cooking, that sort of thing. Clara sat up slowly. You want me to work for him? Just for a while. Until the baby comes. Maybe a little after. Thomas's voice was too careful, too controlled. He'd pay off the debt in exchange for your labor. Clara felt something cold settle in her stomach. He'd pay the whole debt? She asked. Yes. $200? Yes. For housekeeping. Thomas was quiet. Papa, what are you really asking me? It's a contract, Thomas said. A labor contract, perfectly legal. The sheriff would oversee it. You want to sell me? No, it's not like that. You want to sell me to pay your gambling debts. Clara, please. She got out of bed, walked to the window. The town was dark below, a few lights still burning, the mill wheel turning in the river. Who is this man? She asked. His name is Nathaniel Kane. He's got a ranch up past the logging camps. He's widowed, got 2 little girls. He needs help with them. And he'd pay $200? Thomas hesitated. Yes. Clara turned to look at her father. She couldn't see his face in the dark, just his shape. Hunched, small. What happens if I say no? She asked. Thomas didn't answer. Papa, what happens if I say no? The bank will take everything, he said. And there are other debts, not just the bank. Men who don't go through courts. Men who settle things their own way. Do you owe money to those kind of men? Yes. Clara closed her eyes. How much? Enough that they'd hurt me if I don't pay. She stood there for a long time. The baby moved inside her, James's baby, A child who would be born into this mess, into her father's cowardice, into her own helplessness. "When would I have to go?" she asked. "Next week. The sheriff is drawing up the papers. How long would the contract be?" "A year, maybe less, depending on how fast you work it off." "A year." Clara put her hand on her belly. The baby would be born during that year. Her child would come into the world in a stranger's house, under a contract. Owned. "Does he know I'm pregnant?" she asked. "Yes, I told him." "And he still wants me?" "He said it didn't matter." Clara turned back to the window. She thought about James, about the plans they'd made, the farm, the orchard, the life that was supposed to be. All gone now, buried with him in the muddy cemetery. "I don't have a choice, do I?" she said. Thomas didn't answer. He didn't have to. Clara stood at the window and watched the town sleep. She wondered if James could see her from wherever he was. She wondered if he'd understand, if he'd forgive her. She wondered if she'd ever forgive herself. "All right," she said, "I'll do it." Behind her, she heard her father let out a breath. Relief, shame, both mixed together. "Thank you," he whispered. Clara didn't answer. She couldn't trust her voice. She stood at the window until the sun came up, and when the light finally broke over the mountains, she didn't feel hope. She felt nothing at all. The sheriff's office smelled like old tobacco and ink. Clara sat in a straight-backed chair. Her hands were folded on her belly. The baby was quiet. She was grateful for that. She didn't want it to move, didn't want to feel it. Not right now. Thomas stood by the door. He wouldn't look at her. He was staring at his boots. They were old boots, worn at the heels. He'd tried to polish them this morning. She'd seen him. Sheriff Porter sat behind his desk. He was a heavy man with white hair and tired eyes. He'd known Clara since she was small. He'd bought eggs from her mother. "Clara," he said, "you understand what this contract means?" She nodded. "I need you to say it out loud, please, for the record." "Yes," Clara said. Her voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. "I understand. You'll be working for Mr. Kane for a period of 1 year, or until the debt is paid in full. Whichever comes first. Yes. You'll perform household duties, cooking, cleaning, child care, nothing beyond the scope of standard domestic work." Standard domestic work. Clara almost laughed, but the sound caught in her throat. "Yes," she said. Porter picked up a pen. "Mr. Kane has agreed to provide room and board, medical care if needed. He's also agreed that your duties will be adjusted after the child is born. Light work only until you've recovered." Clara looked at the sheriff. His face was carefully neutral, professional, like he was reading a deed or a bill of sale, like this was normal, legal, proper. Maybe it was. Maybe this was just how the world worked. Fathers sold daughters. Women were currency. Children were born into debts they didn't make. "Is he a good man?" Clara asked suddenly. Porter set down the pen. He looked at her for a long moment. "I don't know him well," he said. "He keeps to himself up on that mountain, but I've never heard bad things about him." "That's not the same as good." "No," Porter said. "It's not." Clara looked down at her hands. They were red and rough from work. Her wedding ring was still on her finger. James had saved for 3 months to buy it. It wasn't much, just a thin gold band. But it was hers. She wondered if she'd still be wearing it a year from now. If she'd still be Clara Brennan, or if she'd be something else. Someone else. Property. The door opened behind her. Clara didn't turn around. She knew who it was. Nathaniel Kane. Sheriff Porter stood up. "Mr. Kane, right on time." "Sheriff?" The voice was low, gravelly. A voice that didn't waste words. "This is Clara Brennan," Porter said. "Clara, this is Nathaniel Kane." Clara turned in her chair. The man standing in the doorway was tall, taller than James had been, maybe 6 feet. He wore a dark coat and a brown hat. His face was weathered, lines around his eyes, a scar on his jaw. His beard was short and gray-streaked. His hands were large and scarred, working hands. He looked at Clara. His eyes were gray, steady. He didn't smile, didn't frown. He just looked at her. Then he looked at her belly, then back at her face. "Ma'am," he said. He nodded once. Clara nodded back. She couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight. Nathaniel turned to the sheriff. "The papers ready?" "Yes." Porter laid them on the desk. "2 copies. I'll need both signatures. Yours and Mr. Brennan's." Thomas stepped forward. His hands were shaking. He picked up the pen. Porter pointed to the line. "Sign here." Thomas signed. The pen scratched across the paper. It sounded too loud in the quiet room. Porter blotted the signature. Then he pushed the paper toward Nathaniel. "Mr. Kane?" Nathaniel took off his gloves. He signed his name slowly, carefully, like he wanted to make sure every letter was clear. When he finished, he set the pen down and stepped back. Porter blotted the second signature. Then he folded 1 copy and handed it to Nathaniel. He folded the other and put it in a drawer. "That's it," he said. "The contract is legal and binding." Clara sat very still. She felt like she was floating, like she was watching this happen to someone else, some other woman in some other sheriff's office. Thomas cleared his throat. "Clara, don't." Her voice was sharp, cold. "Don't say anything." Thomas's mouth closed. He looked like he might cry, but Clara didn't care. She didn't want his tears. She didn't want his guilt. She didn't want anything from him. He'd given her away, signed her away. He didn't get to cry about it now. Thomas looked at Sheriff Porter, then at Nathaniel. Then he walked to the door. He paused there, his hand on the knob, his back to Clara. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Then he left. The door closed behind him. Clara listened to his footsteps going down the stairs, going away. She wondered if she'd ever see him again. She wondered if she wanted to. Nathaniel stood by the desk. He hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. He was just waiting. Sheriff Porter cleared his throat. "Clara, do you have belongings to collect?" "A bag, at my father's room." "Mr. Kane will take you there, then you'll go with him." Clara nodded. She stood up slowly. Her back ached. The baby was heavy. She put a hand on her lower back and straightened. Nathaniel watched her. His face showed nothing. "This way," Porter said. He walked them to the door. He put a hand on Clara's shoulder. "You take care now." Clara didn't answer. She walked down the stairs. Nathaniel followed a few steps behind. He didn't try to help her, didn't offer his arm. He just followed. Outside, the November day was gray and cold. The sky pressed down like a weight. Clara's breath came out in white clouds. Nathaniel's wagon was in the street. 2 horses, strong-looking, well-kept. The wagon bed was empty except for a pile of rope and some tools. Room for her things, room for her. "Your father's room above Henderson's?" Nathaniel asked. "Yes." "I'll wait here. You get what you need." Clara looked at him. "You're not coming up?" "No." She waited for an explanation. None came. Nathaniel just stood there, patient, unmovable. Clara walked to the store, went up the back stairs. Her father's room was empty. He wasn't there. She was grateful for that. She didn't want to see him, didn't want to hear him apologize again. She packed quickly. She didn't have much. 2 dresses, a shawl, underclothings, a hairbrush, her mother's Bible, the pocket watch James had carried. She put it all in a canvas bag. She looked around the room one last time. This place where she'd spent the last 3 weeks, where she'd slept beside her father's shame, where she'd agreed to this. She didn't feel sad to leave it. She felt nothing. Clara carried the bag downstairs. Nathaniel took it from her without a word. He put it in the wagon. Then he walked to the front of the wagon and stood there, waiting. Clara realized he was waiting to help her up. She walked to the side, put a hand on the wheel, started to climb. Nathaniel moved, not fast, not grabbing. He just offered his hand, palm up, steady. Clara looked at his hand. It was scarred, calloused. The hand of a man who worked. She took it. His grip was firm, but not tight. He helped her up onto the seat. Then he let go immediately. Didn't hold on longer than necessary. Didn't touch her anywhere else. He walked around and climbed up on the other side, picked up the reins, looked at her once. "It's a long ride," he said. Clara nodded. Nathaniel clicked his tongue. The horses started forward. The wagon rolled down the main street of Settlers Ridge, past the general store, past the church, past the houses where Clara had lived her whole life. People watched from doorways. She saw Mrs. Chen at the bakery, Mr. Morrison at the mill office. They stared. They knew. Everyone would know by evening. Thomas Brennan sold his pregnant daughter. Sold her like a horse, like a piece of furniture. Clara kept her eyes forward. She didn't look at them. She watched the road ahead, the road climbing into the hills, into the pines, into a place she'd never been. Behind her, she heard the church bell ring. Noon. The sound followed them for a while, then it faded. And then there was only the sound of the horses, the wagon wheels, the wind. Nathaniel didn't speak, didn't ask her questions, didn't try to make conversation. He just drove, his hands steady on the reins, his eyes on the road. Clara put her hands on her belly. The baby moved. A small kick, then another, like it knew something had changed, like it could feel her fear. She closed her eyes, tried to breathe. This was her life now, this wagon, this man, this contract. She was Clara Brennan, 24 years old, widow, 7 months pregnant, and owned. The road climbed steeper. The town fell away behind them. The trees grew thicker, taller. The air smelled different here, clean, cold, like pine and stone and snow that hadn't fallen yet. Clara opened her eyes, looked at the man beside her. Nathaniel Kane sat easy in the seat. Not tense, not angry, just present. He didn't look at her, kept his eyes on the road, but once, when the wagon hit a rough patch, he slowed down, gentled it, so she wouldn't be jostled. It was a small thing, maybe nothing, maybe just good driving. But Clara noticed. She didn't know what kind of man had bought her, didn't know what waited at the end of this road, didn't know if she'd survive the next year, if her baby would, if anything good could come from this. But she knew one thing. She was leaving Settlers Ridge behind. She was leaving her father behind. She was leaving the woman she'd been behind. And whoever she was going to be, that started now, on this wagon, on this mountain road, with this silent stranger who held her contract in his pocket. Clara Brennan took a breath, let it out slow, and rode toward her new life. That was how it started. A desperate father, a woman with no choices, a contract signed in a sheriff's office. I didn't see it that day. I was in another town, tending to a dying woman. But when I came back to Settlers Ridge 3 days later, the whole town was talking. Thomas Brennan sold his daughter. Some said it was shameful. Some said it was necessary. Some said Clara should have refused, should have found another way. But I knew the truth. There was no other way. Not for a pregnant widow with no money and no family who'd claim her. Thomas gave her the only thing he had left to give. A way out, a roof, food, safety, and shame. Deep, burning shame that would follow her up that mountain, into that house, into whatever came next. I didn't meet Clara until weeks later, but when I did, I saw it in her eyes. That shame, heavy as stone, quiet as snow. She thought that's all she'd ever be, a woman who was sold, a woman who was owned. She was wrong about that. But it would take a winter to prove it. That's enough for now. The rest comes next. The mountain, the house. The 2 little girls who'd lost their mother. And the slow, hard work of becoming something more than what you were sold as. But that's another part of the story. Rest a moment. Then I'll tell you what happened when they reached the mountain, when Clara Brennan met the 2 children who would change everything. The road to Nathaniel Kane's ranch took 4 hours. Clara told me later that those were the longest 4 hours of her life, longer than the night James died, longer than the weeks waiting for her father to find a solution that never came. 4 hours of silence, 4 hours of climbing into mountains she'd only ever seen from a distance, 4 hours of not knowing what waited at the end. The first hour, they stayed in familiar territory. The road followed the river north. Clara recognized landmarks, the old Hutchins farm, the burned-out sawmill from 3 years back, the place where the road forked toward the logging camps. Then they took the West Fork, and everything changed. The road grew narrower, steeper. The trees pressed in close, pines mostly, tall and dark. Their branches met overhead in places, made a tunnel of green and shadow. The temperature dropped. Clara pulled her shawl tighter. Her breath came out in white clouds. The baby shifted inside her. She put a hand on the spot, felt the movement, a small comfort. She wasn't completely alone. Nathaniel drove steady. He didn't rush the horses, didn't push them hard on the steep parts, just kept them moving. Calm, patient. Once, maybe an hour in, he pulled a canteen from under the seat, uncorked it, took a drink, then he held it out to Clara. "Water," he said. She hesitated, then took it. The water was cold, clean. It tasted like minerals, like stone. She drank and handed it back. "Thank you," she said. Her first word since leaving town. Nathaniel nodded. "Put the canteen away." That was all. Clara watched him from the corner of her eye, trying to understand him, trying to see what kind of man he was. He was older than James had been, maybe 15 years older. His hands on the reins were scarred and weathered. She could see old burns, rope marks, the hands of a man who worked with livestock and tools and land that didn't forgive mistakes. His face was hard to read, not cruel, not kind, just closed. Like a door with no handle, you couldn't tell what was behind it. He didn't look at her except when necessary, when the wagon hit a rough spot and he wanted to make sure she was all right. But even then, his glance was quick, checking, not staring. Clara had been afraid he might talk, might ask questions, might want to know about her, about James, about the baby, about what her father had told him. But Nathaniel seemed to have no interest in any of that. He just drove. Around the 3rd hour, it started to snow, not heavy. Just small flakes drifting down through the pines. They caught in Clara's hair, on her shawl. She watched them melt on her hands. Nathaniel pulled the wagon to a stop, reached behind the seat, pulled out a heavy blanket. "For the cold," he said. He handed it to her. Clara took it. The wool was rough but thick. It smelled like hay and horses. She wrapped it around herself. The warmth was immediate. "Thank you," she said again. Nathaniel clicked to the horses. They moved forward. The snow fell lighter, then stopped. But Clara kept the blanket. She was starting to understand something about this man. He didn't use words when actions would do. He didn't explain, didn't apologize, didn't make excuses. He just did what needed doing. It was strange. After weeks of her father's endless apologies and explanations and justifications, Nathaniel's silence felt almost restful. Almost. They arrived as the sun was setting. The ranch sat in a clearing maybe 2 miles from where the road ended, surrounded by pines on 3 sides, mountains rising behind. A creek ran through the eastern edge. Clara could hear it. Fast water over stones. The house was small. Wood frame, single story. A porch across the front. Smoke coming from the chimney. The roof looked solid. The windows had real glass. Behind the house stood a barn, bigger than the house. Well built, a chicken coop beside it, a corral with split-rail fence. Clara counted 3 horses, maybe more in the barn. The yard was neat, firewood stacked against the house. Tools hung on the barn wall. A water pump near the back door. It wasn't fancy, but it was cared for. It was solid. It looked like a place where someone could survive a winter. Nathaniel stopped the wagon near the porch. He climbed down, came around to Clara's side, held out his hand again. She took it. Let him help her down. Her legs were stiff from sitting. Her back ached. She stood in the yard and looked at the house. This was it, her new home. For a year, maybe more. The door opened. 2 small faces appeared in the doorway, identical, dark braids, serious eyes. They stared at Clara. Clara stared back. "My daughters," Nathaniel said, "Rose and Lily." The girls didn't smile, didn't wave, just watched. Like Clara was a stray dog that had wandered into their yard. Something to be cautious about. Nathaniel picked up Clara's bag from the wagon. "I'll show you your room." He walked to the house. Clara followed. The girls stepped back from the door, gave her space to enter. But they didn't take their eyes off her, especially her belly. Clara wanted to say something. Introduce herself, be friendly. But her throat was tight and she didn't know what to say, so she just nodded to them, a small acknowledgement. One of the girls nodded back, the other just stared. Inside, the house was warm. A fire burned in the stone fireplace. The smell of wood smoke and something cooking. Soup maybe, or stew. The main room held a table, 4 chairs, a rocking chair by the fire, shelves with books and dishes, everything clean, spare. No decoration except a single photograph on the mantel, a woman, young, dark-haired, smiling. Nathaniel didn't look at the photograph. He walked to a narrow hallway, opened a door. "This room's yours," he said. Clara looked inside. A small room, a bed, a chair, a window with a view of the pines, a washstand with a basin, a hook on the wall for hanging clothes. It was more than she'd had at her father's, more privacy, more space. "Thank you," she said. Nathaniel set her bag on the chair. "You'll help with cooking and chores. Nothing heavy, not until after the baby." Clara nodded. "The girls do their own washing. They can help with other things. All right? Supper's at 6. Breakfast at dawn." He paused. "You need anything right now?" Clara shook her head. Nathaniel left. Closed the door behind him. Clara heard his boots on the floor, then the sound of the front door opening. Closing. He'd gone outside. Clara sat on the bed. It was firmer than she expected. The quilt was old but clean, patched in places. Good work. Someone who knew how to sew. She put her hands on her belly. The baby was quiet now. Tired from the journey, maybe. "We're here," she whispered to it. "This is where we'll be." The baby didn't answer, didn't move. Clara lay back on the bed, stared at the ceiling. The wood was smooth, no cracks, no leaks. A good, solid roof over her head. She should feel grateful, safe, lucky even. Instead, she felt empty, hollow. Like she'd left herself behind in that sheriff's office. And what arrived here was just a shell. Just a body going through motions. She closed her eyes, tried not to think, tried not to feel. After a while she heard voices, small voices. The girls, whispering in the hallway outside her door. Clara held very still, listening. Is she really staying? One girl. Papa said she is. The other girl. But why? To help, because of Mama. Silence. Then, she's really big. Papa said she's going to have a baby. When? Soon, I think. More silence. Clara could hear them breathing, standing just outside her door, trying to decide what to think about her. "Do you think she'll stay?" The first girl again, her voice smaller now, uncertain. The second girl didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was even smaller. Mama didn't. The words hung in the air, heavy, final. Then Clara heard footsteps, the girls walking away, their voices fading. Clara opened her eyes, stared at the ceiling again. Mama didn't stay. So that's what this was about. These 2 little girls had lost their mother. And now here was Clara, a stranger, pregnant, in their house. No wonder they looked at her like that. No wonder they were afraid. I should tell you about Margaret. About what happened to her, because you need to understand what those little girls had lived through, what Nathaniel had lived through, and why Clara's arrival opened wounds that had never properly healed. Margaret Kane died in February of 1865. She was 28 years old. She'd been in labor for 16 hours. The twins were coming early, 6 weeks early. And something was wrong. Nathaniel had ridden for the doctor at first light, but the doctor was 20 miles away. And Nathaniel's horse threw a shoe 5 miles from town. He had to walk the horse back, find the blacksmith, wait while the shoe was fixed, then ride again. By the time he got the doctor and made it back to the ranch, Margaret was dying. She'd lost too much blood. The babies were born, tiny, blue. The midwife got them breathing. got them wrapped and warm. 2 girls, alive. But Margaret was slipping away. Nathaniel held her hand, begged her to hold on. The doctor worked, did everything he could. But there was too much blood, too much damage. Margaret opened her eyes, looked at Nathaniel, looked at the 2 small bundles beside her. "Promise me," she whispered. Her voice was so faint he had to lean close to hear. "Promise me they'll have a mother's love." "You'll be fine," Nathaniel said. "You'll be fine. Just hold on. Promise me, Nathaniel. Don't let them grow up alone." I promise, but you're not going anywhere. You're going to be fine." Margaret smiled, just a little, like she knew better. "I love you," she said. Then she closed her eyes, and she was gone. Nathaniel sat there holding her hand for a long time after. The doctor said something. The midwife said something. But Nathaniel didn't hear them. He just held Margaret's hand and stared at her face. This woman he'd loved since he was 20. This woman who'd left her family in Boston to marry a frontier rancher. This woman who'd never complained, never regretted it. Gone. Because he'd been too slow. Because a horse threw her through a shoe. Because he couldn't get the doctor there in time. His fault, all his fault. Nathaniel told me this one night, about 3 weeks after Clara arrived. I'd ridden up to the ranch to check on them. We sat on the porch. He smoked his pipe, stared at the mountains. "I was too late," he said. 5 minutes earlier, and maybe the doctor could have saved her." "You don't know that," I said. "I know I should have been there." "You were getting help. I should have been there." He said it flat, final, like a truth he'd accepted long ago. "I promised her the girls would have a mother's love. I've been trying to keep that promise for 8 years, and failing." That's when I understood why he'd bought Clara's contract, why he'd paid Thomas Brennan's debt for a pregnant stranger. It wasn't kindness, not really. It was guilt and a promise. And one last chance to keep his word to a woman who died believing he'd failed her. Supper that first night was quiet. The girls had made stew, venison and potatoes and carrots. It was good. Better than Clara expected for children their age. They sat at the table, Nathaniel at the head, the girls on one side, Clara at the far end, as far from everyone as possible. Nobody spoke. The only sounds were spoons against bowls, the fire crackling, the wind outside. Clara tried to eat, but her stomach was tight. The baby pressed against her ribs. She managed a few bites, then set her spoon down. One of the girls watched her, the one who'd answered more questions in the hallway. Rose, Clara thought, or maybe Lily. She couldn't tell them apart yet. "Are you sick?" the girl asked. "Lily," Nathaniel's voice, quiet but firm. "Mind your manners." So that was Lily, the bold one. "I'm just asking," Lily said. "She's not eating." "I'm fine," Clara said. "Just tired from the journey." Lily studied her, then went back to her stew. The other girl, Rose, hadn't said anything. She ate slowly, kept her eyes on her bowl. But Clara could feel her watching, sideways glances, checking. After supper, the girls cleared the table. Clara started to help, but Nathaniel shook his head. "They know the routine. You rest." Clara sat back down, watched the girls work. They moved around each other easily, a dance they'd done 1,000 times. Rose washed. Lily dried. They didn't talk, didn't need to. When they finished, they said goodnight to their father. Didn't say anything to Clara, just walked down the hall to their room, closed the door. Nathaniel stood. "I'll be outside checking the animals. Lock the door when you go to bed." "All right." He put on his coat, his hat, went out into the cold. Clara sat alone at the table. The fire burned low. The house creaked around her. Settling. Breathing. She looked at the photograph on the mantel. The woman. Margaret. Dark hair, pretty smile. She looked young, happy, alive. Clara stood, walked closer, studied the face. This was the woman Nathaniel had loved. The woman who'd died giving birth. The woman those 2 girls remembered and mourned. And here was Clara, another pregnant woman, in her house, in her space, A poor replacement for what they'd lost. Clara turned away from the photograph, went to her room, closed the door. She undressed slowly, put on her nightgown, lay down on the bed, pulled the quilt up to her chin. Outside she heard Nathaniel moving around, the barn door opening, closing, his voice talking low to the horses. Inside she heard nothing. The girls were silent in their room, asleep maybe, or lying awake like her, wondering what would happen now. Clara put her hands on her belly, felt the baby move. A small flutter, then stillness. "We're going to be all right," she whispered. But she didn't believe it. She lay in the dark and listened to the wind, the house, the mountains settling around her. This was her life now, this room, this house, these people who didn't want her. 1 year. She just had to survive 1 year. Then she'd be free, if she could last that long. The days fell into a pattern. Clara woke before dawn. She didn't mean to, but the baby kicked, and her back ached, and sleep was difficult. So she rose, dressed, went to the kitchen. The first morning, Nathaniel was already up. He had the fire going, coffee on the stove. He looked surprised to see her. "You don't have to be up this early," he said. "I'm awake anyway." Clara looked at the stove. "May I make breakfast?" Nathaniel hesitated, then nodded. "Girls like eggs. There's bacon in the cold box." He went outside. Clara cooked. The girls came out when they smelled food. They sat at the table, watched her work, didn't offer to help. Clara served them. Eggs, bacon, biscuits she'd made from the stores in the pantry. The girls ate, didn't thank her, just ate. Nathaniel came in, sat, ate in silence. When he finished, he stood. "I'll be working the north fence line today, back by supper." He looked at the girls. "Help Clara if she asks." "Yes, Papa," they said together. He left. The girls cleared their plates, washed them, then disappeared to their room. Clara cleaned the kitchen, swept the floor, wiped down the table. She worked slowly. Her back hurt. The baby was heavy, but she didn't stop. She needed to prove she could do this, needed to show she was worth the debt Nathaniel had paid, worth the space she occupied. She couldn't be a burden. She wouldn't let herself be a burden. The days were all similar. Clara cooked, cleaned, mended clothes she found in a basket by the fireplace. She tried to talk to the girls, ask them questions about school, about the ranch, about their lives. They answered, but short, polite, distant. "Do you go to school?" "No, Papa teaches us." "What do you like to study?" "Reading, numbers." "Do you have friends nearby?" "No, we live too far." Every conversation ended quickly. The girls would find an excuse to leave, go to their room, go help their father, go anywhere Clara wasn't. Clara tried not to let it hurt. They were children. They'd lost their mother. She was a stranger. It would take time. But at night, lying in her room, she felt the loneliness like a weight. She missed James, missed having someone who wanted her there, someone who chose her. Here, nobody had chosen her. She'd been bought. Like furniture, like livestock. The girls knew it. Nathaniel knew it. And Clara couldn't forget it. It was the 8th morning. Clara was in the kitchen making breakfast. Bacon sizzling, coffee brewing, biscuits in the oven. She heard the girls' door open, footsteps in the hall. But they didn't come to the kitchen. They went to the main room. Clara kept working, cracked eggs into the pan, stirred them. Tried not to listen to the girls whispering. Then she heard something, a plate being set down, the clink of ceramic on wood. Clara glanced toward the dining table. 3 plates were already there, the girls' usual spots and Nathaniel's. But now there was a 4th, at the far end, where Clara usually sat. One of the girls was standing by the table, Lily. She'd just set down the plate. She stood there for a moment, looking at it. Then she turned and saw Clara watching. Their eyes met. Lily's face flushed. She looked away quickly, walked toward the door. Rose appeared from the hallway, saw the 4th plate, looked at her sister. "Why did you do that?" Rose asked. Not angry, just surprised. Lily shrugged, didn't answer. "Lily, Because Clara cooks for us, Lily said quietly. It's polite. Rose stared at her sister, then at the plate, then at Clara. Something passed between the two girls, an understanding, or maybe a challenge. Rose walked to the cupboard, got out cups, set them at each place, including Clara's. Lily watched, then nodded once. The girls went to sit at the table. Clara stood at the stove, her throat tight, her eyes stinging. It was such a small thing, a plate, a cup, just basic courtesy, but it was the first time the girls had acknowledged that she belonged at the table. The first crack in the wall they'd built around themselves. Clara finished cooking, brought the food to the table, sat in her spot, the spot that now had a plate waiting for her. The girls ate. Clara ate. Nobody spoke, but it was different now. Just a little, just enough. When Nathaniel came in, he looked at the table, at the 4 plates, at the girls, at Clara. He didn't say anything, just sat down and ate. But Clara thought she saw something in his face, something like relief, or maybe hope. After breakfast, Lily carried her plate to the wash basin. She paused near Clara. The biscuits were good, she said. Quiet, almost shy. Then she went to wash her plate. Clara sat very still, her hands in her lap, trying not to cry. It was just a compliment, just a few words. But it was the first kind thing anyone in this house had said to her, and it meant everything. I rode up to the ranch 3 weeks after Clara arrived. It was a cold December day, snow on the ground, the sky that flat gray that means more snow coming. I'd heard the talk in town. People had opinions, most of them unkind. I wanted to see for myself how Clara was managing, how the situation truly was. Nathaniel met me in the yard. We shook hands. He looked tired. But then he always looked tired. Reverend, wasn't expecting you. Just checking in, making sure everyone's well. We're managing. The girls? They're all right. And Mrs. Brennan? Nathaniel's jaw tightened. She's inside, working too hard probably. But she won't listen when I tell her to rest. We walked to the house. Clara was in the kitchen, kneading dough. Her belly was very large now, 8 months at least. She looked up when we entered. Her face was flushed from work. Reverend Hutchins, she said, surprise in her voice. Mrs. Brennan, good to see you. She wiped her hands on her apron. Would you like coffee? That would be kind. Thank you. She poured coffee for all of us. The girls came out of their room, saw me, said hello politely, then sat quietly in the corner with their books. We sat at the table, Clara, Nathaniel, and me. We talked about small things, the weather, the upcoming Christmas, the condition of the road. But I was watching, seeing how they moved around each other, how they spoke, what they didn't say. Clara was deferential, careful. She didn't impose, didn't take up space. She asked permission for everything. May I? If it's all right. I don't mean to bother. Like she was afraid of being sent away, of being too much trouble. Nathaniel was distant, polite. He didn't look at her much. When he spoke to her, it was about practical things. The pump needs fixing. There's venison in the cold box. The girls need new stockings. And the girls. They were warming. I could see it. Small signs. The way Rose passed Clara the sugar without being asked. The way Lily showed her a drawing she'd made. But there was still a wall. Still caution. This house was healing. But slowly. Carefully. Like a bone that had broken and was knitting back together. Crooked, maybe. But together. After coffee, Nathaniel and I went to the porch. The girls took Clara to their room to show her something. Nathaniel and I stood in the cold, watched the sun setting behind the pines. She works hard, I said. Too hard. You could tell her to stop. I do. She doesn't listen. Nathaniel pulled out his pipe, packed it, lit it. She thinks if she stops, I'll send her away. Will you? He looked at me. No. Does she know that? Nathaniel didn't answer. He smoked, stared at the mountains. Tell me about Margaret, I said. And that's when he told me. About the labor, the blood, being too late with the doctor, the promise he'd made, the guilt he'd carried for 8 years. "When Thomas Brennan came to me with Clara's contract," Nathaniel said, "I saw a chance, a way to keep my promise. Give the girls what Margaret wanted. A mother, yes. And what about Clara? What does she want?" Nathaniel's face was hard to read. "I don't know. I don't ask." "Maybe you should." He smoked his pipe. Didn't answer. I left as the snow started falling. Rode back down the mountain thinking about the 3 people in that house. All of them broken. All of them trying to survive. All of them too afraid to reach for what they really needed. Time would tell if they could bridge that gap, or if they'd stay strangers under the same roof, close, but never touching. That was December, the cold months, the hard months, and the months when everything started to shift. Because sometimes it takes a mountain winter to burn away what you thought you knew, to strip you down to what's real, what's true. Clara thought she was property, thought she'd been bought and sold and that's all she'd ever be. Nathaniel thought he was keeping a promise to a ghost, thought he could fix the past by repeating it, and the girls thought any woman who came into their house would leave, just like their mother, just like everyone. They were all wrong, but it would take a blizzard to prove it, and a night when death came close, and a choice that nobody saw coming. But that's the next part of the story, the part where the walls started to crack, where the silence started to break, where Clara Brennan stopped being a woman who was sold and started becoming something else entirely. December turned the mountain into something else. The snow came heavy, 3 feet in the first storm, then another 2 feet, then more. The road down to town became impassable. The ranch was cut off, isolated, just the 4 of them, the house, the barn, the white world pressing in. This is when things started to change, when the careful distance couldn't hold any more, when survival demanded more than politeness. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 4 weeks after Clara had arrived. The snow was falling again, soft and steady, the kind that builds up quiet. Dangerous. Clara was in the kitchen, mending one of Nathaniel's shirts. The fabric was worn thin at the collar. She was replacing it with cloth from an old sheet. Her fingers were stiff from the cold. The baby pressed against her ribs. She was 8.5 months now. Any day, she thought. Any day now. She heard voices from the girls' room, then crying. Not loud, but unmistakable. Clara set down the mending, stood slowly, walked to the hallway. The door to the girls' room was cracked open. Through it she could see Lily sitting on her bed, a book in her lap, her shoulders shaking. Rose stood beside her, her hand on her sister's shoulder. "Put it away," Rose said quietly. "You're just making yourself sad." "I don't want to forget her," Lily said, her voice thick with tears. "You won't forget her." "But I can't remember her voice anymore. I try, and I can't hear it." Clara's chest tightened. She should walk away. This was private, not her place. But her hand moved to the door, pushed it open a little. Both girls looked up. Lily quickly wiped her eyes. Rose stepped in front of her sister. Protective. "I'm sorry," Clara said. "I heard crying. I wanted to make sure everything was all right." "We're fine," Rose said. Cold. Dismissive. But Lily looked at Clara, her face wet, her eyes red. In her lap was a small leather-bound book, worn at the edges, well-loved. "What's that?" Clara asked gently. Lily clutched it tighter. "It's Mama's diary." Rose shot her sister a look, like she'd revealed too much. Clara stayed in the doorway, didn't come closer, didn't push. "Your Mama wrote in a diary?" Lily nodded. "Every day, even when she was sick, even at the end." "That must be precious to you." "It is." Lily's voice was small. "But Rose says I shouldn't read it so much. Says it makes me too sad." "I didn't say don't read it," Rose corrected. "I said don't read it every day. You're living in the past." "So what if I am?" Lily's voice rose. "At least Mama wanted us. At least she didn't—" She stopped, looked at Clara. Her face flushed. "Didn't what?" Clara asked quietly. Lily looked down at the diary. "Nothing." But Clara knew. Didn't leave them, didn't get sold away, didn't become a contract in a stranger's house. The words hung in the air, unspoken but heavy. Clara should feel hurt, should feel angry, but she just felt tired, so tired. "May I tell you something?" she asked. The girls didn't answer, but they didn't tell her to leave either. Clara came into the room, sat carefully in the chair by the window, put her hands on her belly. "I had someone too," she said. "Someone I loved. My husband. His name was James." The girls watched her, wary, curious. "We were married for 2 years. He was kind, patient. He worked at the mill. He wanted to buy land, start a farm." Clara's voice caught. "He died 4 weeks before I came here. The fever took him. I sat beside him and held his hand. And then he was gone." Lily's crying had stopped. She was listening now. "I try to remember his voice too," Clara continued. "The way he laughed, the things he used to say. But it gets harder. The memory fades. And that's frightening. Because if I forget, then it's like he was never real." She looked at Lily, at the diary in her lap. "Your mama was real," Clara said. "She loved you. She wanted you. And nothing will ever change that. Not me being here, not time passing, not anything." Lily's eyes filled with tears again. "But you're here now, and she's not." "I know. And Papa brought you here to replace her." Clara shook her head. "No, I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here because I had nowhere else to go, because my father made a terrible choice. And because your father was kind enough to give me a roof." She paused, chose her next words carefully. "I don't want to be your mother. I can't be. You already had a mother, and she's still with you, in your memories, in that diary, in the way you take care of each other." Rose was watching Clara now, her face unreadable. "Then what do you want?" Rose asked. Clara thought about it. What did she want? "I want to be useful," she said finally. "I want to earn my keep. I want my baby to be born somewhere safe. And I want you girls to know that I'm not trying to take anything from you. I'm just trying to survive. Same as you." Lily looked down at the diary, ran her fingers over the worn leather cover. "Mama wrote something at the end," she said quietly, "right before she died. Do you want to hear it?" Clara wasn't sure she should, but she nodded. Lily opened the diary, turned to the last page. Her voice shook as she read. "February 10th, 1865. The babies are here. 2 perfect girls. I'm so tired, but I need to write this down. Nathaniel, if something happens to me, please find someone to help you. Don't raise them alone. They need a mother's love. I know you'll try to do it yourself, but you can't. Promise me you'll find someone kind, someone who will love them. I hope she's reading this someday. I hope she knows how grateful I am." Lily closed the diary, looked at Clara. She wanted someone. She asked Papa to find someone. Clara's throat was tight. She couldn't speak. Rose sat down beside her sister, put her arm around her. Both girls looked at Clara, not with hostility anymore, not with suspicion, with something else, something like understanding. "You really loved him?" Rose asked. "Your husband?" "Yes," Clara whispered. "And you miss him?" "Every day." The girls looked at each other, then back at Clara. "We miss Mama every day too," Lily said. Clara nodded. "I know you do." They sat there, the 3 of them, connected by loss, by the people who were gone, by the empty spaces that never quite fill. After a while, Clara stood. "I should get back to the mending." She walked to the door, stopped, looked back. "Thank you for sharing that with me," she said. "What your mama wrote, it means something, that she thought about this, about you girls having help. You're not so bad," Lily said suddenly. "For someone who was bought." Rose elbowed her sister. "Lily." "What? It's true?" "Papa bought her. Everyone knows it." "That's rude, but true." Clara smiled. "Just a little." "It is true. Your father did buy my contract, and yes, I was sold. But I'm trying to be more than that. I'm trying to be someone worth the debt he paid." She left them, went back to the kitchen, sat down with the mending, but her hands were shaking, and her eyes were wet, because Margaret Kane had known, had understood, had asked for exactly this: someone to help, someone to care for her daughters, and maybe, just maybe, Clara could be that someone, if she could survive the winter, if she could earn the girls' trust, if she could prove she was more than just a contract. That night Clara lay in her bed, couldn't sleep. The baby was active, restless. She put her hands on her belly and tried to breathe through the discomfort. And she thought about James. She'd been trying not to, trying to push the memories away, because they hurt too much, because remembering made the loss fresh. But tonight, after reading Margaret's words, after talking about loss with the girls, the memories came flooding back. It was spring when James had proposed. 2 years and 4 months ago, they'd been walking by the river. The water was high from snowmelt, fast and loud. James had been quiet all day, nervous. She'd thought maybe he was worried about work. The mill had been cutting back hours. Then he'd stopped walking, turned to face her, pulled something from his pocket, a ring, simple gold band, nothing fancy, but it gleamed in the sunlight. "Clara Brennan," he'd have said, his voice shaking, "would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" She'd said yes before he even finished the question. They were married a month later, small ceremony. Her father gave her away. Her mother had already been gone 3 years. But Clara felt her there, in the church, in the vows, in the joy. James had carried her over the threshold of their little house. 2 rooms, drafty, but theirs. "Someday," he'd said, "I'll build you a proper house, big kitchen, room for children, a garden out back." "This is perfect," Clara had told him, and meant it. Those 2 years had been good, simple. They'd worked hard, saved money, made plans. James would come home from the mill tired and dusty, but he'd smile when he saw her, kiss her forehead, tell her about his day. At night they'd sit by the fire. She'd mend, he'd whittle. They'd talk about the future, the land they'd buy, the children they'd have, the life they'd build. "I want at least 3, James had said one night. 3 children, 2 boys and a girl." "Why 2 boys?" "So they can help with the farm. And the girl can help you," Clara had laughed. "What if we have 3 girls?" "Then I'll be a very lucky man." He'd pulled her close. "Any child with you as their mother will be blessed." 6 months later, Clara had told him about the baby. He'd picked her up, spun her around, laughed like a child. "We're having a baby," he'd shouted, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. He'd been so happy, so ready. He'd started building a cradle, working on it every evening, sanding the wood smooth, making sure there were no splinters, no rough edges. "Has to be perfect," he'd said, "for our baby." The cradle was finished, sitting in their house, waiting. But James would never see the baby, would never hold his child, would never know if it was a boy or a girl. Clara opened her eyes, stared at the ceiling. The tears ran down her face, into her hair. She'd lost so much. James, her home, her future, her dignity. But she still had the baby, still had this life inside her, this piece of James that would continue. She had to survive, had to make this work, for the baby's sake, even if it meant living in another woman's house, being another woman's poor replacement, being bought and sold and owned. She had to survive, for James, for the baby, for the woman she used to be. Clara put her hands on her belly, whispered to the child inside, "Your father loved you. He wanted you so much. And I'm going to make sure you know that. Even if he's not here, I'll tell you about him, about how good he was, how much he would have loved you." The baby kicked, like it heard, like it understood. Clara closed her eyes. Let herself cry, let herself grieve, because tomorrow she'd have to be strong again, have to be useful, have to prove her worth. But tonight, in the dark, she could be just Clara Brennan, widow, alone, grieving. Tomorrow would come soon enough. The blizzard hit 3 days later. It came fast. One moment the sky was gray but calm. The next, the wind was screaming. The snow came sideways, thick and blinding. Nathaniel had been in the barn when it started. Clara was in the house with the girls. They'd been making bread. The kitchen was warm, flour on the table, the smell of yeast rising. Then the wind hit. The house shuddered. The windows rattled. "Storm's here," Rose said. She went to the window, looked out. "Bad one." Lily joined her. "Can you see Papa?" "No, too much snow." Clara's stomach tightened. Nathaniel was out there, alone, in this. She went to the door, pulled on James's old coat. It barely fit over her belly now, but it was warm. "What are you doing?" Rose asked. "The chickens. They'll freeze if they're not in the coop. Papa will get them. He's in the barn. He might not know how bad it is yet." Clara opened the door. The wind nearly tore it from her hand. Snow blasted into the house, cold like knives. "Close the door!" Lily shouted. Clara stepped out, pulled the door shut behind her. The wind drove her back against the house. The snow was so thick she couldn't see the barn, couldn't see the coop, couldn't see anything. She put her head down, started walking, one hand on the house, following the wall, counting steps. She knew the coop was 20 paces from the back door. She'd walked it every day for weeks. 10 steps, 15, 20. She reached out, found the coop. The door was open. She could hear the chickens inside, panicked, squawking. She pushed into the coop, started grabbing chickens, shoving them into the enclosed part. They fought her, pecked at her hands. But she didn't stop, got them all inside, closed the door, latched it. Then she turned to leave, and realized she couldn't see the house anymore. The snow was too thick, the wind too strong. She'd lost her bearings. Clara stood very still, tried to think. The house was behind her. She'd walked straight, just had to walk straight back. She took a step, then another. The wind pushed her sideways. She corrected, kept walking. Nothing, no house, no wall. She'd gone too far, or not far enough, or the wrong direction. Her hands were numb, her face burned from the cold. The baby pressed heavy against her pelvis. "Nathaniel!" she shouted. But the wind took her voice, scattered it. No one would hear. She kept walking, hands out in front, searching for the house, the barn, anything. Then a hand grabbed her arm. Clara gasped, spun. Nathaniel, his face red from cold, snow in his beard, his eyes hard. "What the hell are you doing out here?" he shouted over the wind. "The chickens. Damn the chickens!" He pulled her toward him. "You could die out here. I was just... You're 8 months pregnant. What were you thinking?" Clara's temper flared. "I was thinking someone had to take care of them. I was thinking you were in the barn and might not know." "I know how to read a storm." Nathaniel's voice was sharp, angry. "I don't need you risking your life for a few birds." "I'm not helpless." "You're pregnant." "So what? I can still work. I can still be useful." Nathaniel stared at her, snow gathering on his hat, his shoulders. "You think that's what this is about?" he asked, quieter now. "Being useful?" "It's all I have," Clara shouted. "Don't you understand? If I'm not useful, what am I? Just a burden, just another mouth to feed, just property that cost you $200. The words hung between them. Raw, honest. Nathaniel's jaw worked. He looked away, then back at her. "You're not property," he said, his voice low, hard. "Don't ever call yourself that." "Then what am I?" He didn't answer, just grabbed her arm again. "Come on, before we both freeze." He pulled her through the snow. She couldn't see where they were going, but he seemed to know, seemed to navigate by instinct, or memory, or some sense she didn't have. Then the barn wall appeared. He pulled her inside, out of the wind. The relief was immediate. The barn was cold but not deadly. The horses stamped in their stalls, warm breath steaming. Nathaniel let go of her arm, took off his gloves. His hands were red, raw. "You can't do things like that," he said, not looking at her. "Can't go out in storms, can't risk yourself." "Why do you care?" Clara asked. "If I die, you're released from the contract. You'd be free of me." Nathaniel turned to face her. His eyes were gray and fierce. "You think I want you dead?" he asked. "I don't know what you want. You never talk to me, never tell me anything. I'm just here, taking up space, using your resources, and I don't know—" Her voice broke. "I don't know if you regret it, buying my contract, bringing me here." Nathaniel stared at her for a long moment. The barn was quiet except for the wind outside, the horses breathing, the storm raging. "I signed that contract because your father had nowhere else to turn," he said, finally. His voice was controlled, deliberate. "I signed it because I knew what would happen to you if I didn't. You'd end up in a workhouse. Or worse, you and your baby. So it was pity. It was necessity." He paused. "And maybe it was selfish, too." "Selfish how?" Nathaniel looked away, at the horses, at the barn wall, anywhere but at her. "My wife died 8 years ago," he said. "Died giving birth to Rose and Lily. I was too late getting the doctor, too late to save her." Clara went still, listening. "She made me promise something before she died," Nathaniel continued. "Made me promise the girls would have a mother's love, that I wouldn't raise them alone. I've been trying to keep that promise for 8 years, and failing." He turned back to Clara. "When your father came to me with your contract, I saw a chance. A way to finally keep my word. Give the girls what Margaret wanted. So yes, it was selfish. I bought you to ease my guilt, to honor a promise to a dead woman." Clara's chest ached. "The girls showed me her diary. I know what she wrote, about wanting someone to help." Nathaniel's eyes widened. "They showed you? Today. Lily was crying, reading Margaret's last entry." "What did it say?" Clara recited it from memory, the words about finding someone kind, someone who would love the girls, the gratitude to whoever came after. When she finished, Nathaniel's face had softened, just a little. "I didn't know she wrote that," he said quietly. "She understood. What you'd need, what the girls would need." They stood there, the storm outside, the warmth of the barn around them. Two broken people who'd been thrown together by desperation and guilt. "I don't regret it," Nathaniel said finally. "Buying your contract, bringing you here, the girls are better with you than without. I see it. The way they're starting to smile again, starting to talk, starting to heal." Clara's eyes stung. "They're good girls." "They are." He looked at her. "And you're good with them, better than you think, better than I expected." It was the closest thing to a compliment he'd given her. Clara felt something shift in her chest, something like warmth. "Thank you," she said. Nathaniel nodded. "But you can't take risks. Not for chickens, not for anything. You're carrying a child. That child needs you alive. The girls need you alive. I need—" He stopped, cleared his throat. "We need you to be careful." Clara nodded, understanding what he was saying, what he couldn't quite say. "I'll be more careful," she promised. "Good." They waited in the barn until the worst of the storm passed. Then Nathaniel walked her back to the house, his hand on her arm, guiding her through the snow. The girls met them at the door, faces worried. "We were scared," Lily said. "You were gone so long?" "We're fine," Clara said, "just waiting out the worst of it." Rose looked at her father, then at Clara. Something passed between the three of them, an understanding, a shift. They were becoming something, not a family yet, but not strangers anymore either, something in between, something fragile and new. The deputy came on a gray afternoon in mid-January. Clara was in the kitchen, making stew for supper. The baby was lower now, heavy. She had maybe 2 weeks left, maybe less. She heard the horse, looked out the window, saw a man in a brown coat dismounting, a star on his chest. Nathaniel was in the yard, chopping wood. He set down the axe, walked to meet the deputy. Clara couldn't hear what they were saying, but she saw Nathaniel's shoulders stiffen, saw his jaw tighten. This wasn't good news. After a few minutes, Nathaniel came inside. The deputy followed. Nathaniel removed his hat, looked at Clara. "This is Deputy Warren," he said. His voice was flat. "He's here to deliver a message." The deputy nodded to Clara. He looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to intrude. This is a difficult matter." Clara wiped her hands on her apron. "What kind of matter?" The deputy glanced at Nathaniel, then back at Clara. "There's been talk in town," he said carefully, "about you, ma'am, and about Mr. Kane here." Clara's stomach turned. "What kind of talk?" Your father's been saying things about the nature of your arrangement. What kind of things? The deputy shifted his weight. He's telling people that Mr. Kane bought you for improper purposes, that the contract was a cover for something else. Clara gripped the back of a chair, her face burning with shame. That's a lie, Nathaniel said, his voice hard. A damned lie. I know it is, the deputy said quickly. I'm not here to accuse anyone. I'm here to warn you. People are listening to him. The sheriff thought you should know. The girls had come out of their room. They stood in the hallway, listening, their faces pale. What does he mean, Papa? Rose asked, her voice small, frightened. Nothing, Nathaniel said firmly. Go to your room. But the girls didn't move. They stared at the deputy, at their father, at Clara. Clara felt the weight of their stares, the shame pressing down, crushing. I'll leave, she said, her voice shaking. I'll go back to town. I don't want to bring shame to your home. No, Nathaniel said, sharp, final. Clara looked at him. But if people think, I don't care what people think. He turned to face her fully, his eyes steady and unyielding. You've done nothing wrong. Your father's the one who should be ashamed. But the girls know the truth, don't you? Rose and Lily nodded, uncertain, but trusting their father. Nathaniel turned to the deputy. She's been working here honestly, helping with the house and the girls, that's all. If people want to twist that into something ugly, that's their problem. The deputy sighed. I believe you, Nathaniel, but you know how folks are. Once the talk starts, it spreads. Let it spread. Nathaniel's voice was cold, hard. I'm not sending her away because people don't know how to mind their own business. All right. The deputy put his hat back on. I've said my piece. Just thought you should know. He looked at Clara. Ma'am, I'm sorry this is happening. Clara couldn't speak, just nodded. The deputy left. Nathaniel stood by the door for a long time after he was gone, his hands clenched into fists. Clara stayed by the table. The girls stayed in the hallway. Nobody moved. I'm sorry, Clara said finally. This is my fault. My father's lies. Clara. Nathaniel said her name for the first time since she'd arrived. It stopped her cold. You didn't cause this. Your father did. But He walked toward her, stopped a few feet away, looked at her with those steady gray eyes. You've been here for weeks. You've worked hard. You've been good to my daughters. I'm not going to let your father ruin that because he's too much of a coward to face what he did. Clara's vision blurred. She blinked hard. You're not leaving, Nathaniel said, his voice softer now. Not unless you want to. I don't want to, Clara whispered. Then it settled. He walked past her, down the hall to check on the girls. Clara stood alone in the kitchen, her hands shaking, her heart pounding. Nathaniel had defended her, had spoken her name, had stood up for her when no one else ever had. She pressed a hand to her belly. The baby kicked, strong, insistent. Did you hear that? She whispered. We're staying. We're not leaving. The baby kicked again, like agreement, like relief. Clara wiped her eyes, took a slow breath, went back to making supper. Because this was her home now. These people were her family. Not by blood, not by choice, but by something else. Something harder, something earned. And she wasn't going to let her father's lies take that away. Nathaniel left that night. He told the girls he was going to town, checking on supplies. He told Clara the same thing, but I knew better. I'd seen the look in his eyes when the deputy left. I'd seen the anger, the determination. He was going to face Thomas Brennan. I was in my room at the boarding house when Nathaniel came to see me. It was late, past midnight, but he knocked anyway. I answered in my nightshirt. Reverend, he said, I need to know something. Come in. He stood in my small room, hat in his hands, face hard as stone. Thomas Brennan, he said. What do you know about his wife? About how she died? I was quiet for a moment. Then I understood. You think there's a connection between his wife's death and his hatred of you. I know there is. I can feel it, but I don't know what. I sat down at my desk, pulled out the church records. I'd been the minister in Settlers Ridge for 20 years. I'd buried most of the town at one time or another. Sarah Brennan, I said. Reading the entry, died April 12, 1863. Consumption. She'd been sick for 6 months. She needed a doctor. Yes, but Thomas couldn't afford one. Did he ask for help? I turned the page, found the list of charity requests that year, ran my finger down. Yes, he asked the church board for assistance, asked several local businessmen too. I looked up at Nathaniel. Including you. Nathaniel went pale. I don't remember. It was 10 years ago. You'd just had the twins. Margaret was recovering. Money was tight. Did I refuse him? I looked back at the records. You weren't the only one. 5 men were asked. All 5 said no. The town had a hard winter that year. Nobody had extra. But Thomas blamed me. Maybe. Or maybe he blamed everyone. And when he saw your name on Clara's contract, all that old bitterness came back. Nathaniel sat down heavily, put his head in his hands. He thinks I let his wife die, he said. Thinks I could have saved her and didn't. You couldn't have. Even if you'd given him money, it wouldn't have been enough. She was too far gone. But he doesn't know that. He just knows I said no. I closed the record book. What are you going to do? Nathaniel looked up, his eyes hard, determined. I'm going to tell him the truth. I'm going to make him face what he's done. Selling his daughter because he couldn't face his own shame. That won't end well. I don't care. He stood, put on his hat, walked to the door. Nathaniel, I said, be careful. Grief makes men dangerous. So does guilt. He left. I listened to his boots on the stairs, the front door closing, his horse riding away into the night. I sat in my room and prayed. For Nathaniel, for Thomas, for Clara and those 2 little girls, because I knew that whatever happened next would change everything. Nathaniel found Thomas at the saloon. It was late. The place was nearly empty, just Thomas and 2 other men, cards on the table, whiskey in their glasses. Thomas looked up when Nathaniel walked in. His face went white. Nathaniel crossed the room, stood over the table. Outside, Nathaniel said. Now. I'm in the middle of a game. I don't care. Outside. Thomas looked at the other men. They looked away. Didn't want to get involved. Thomas stood slowly, followed Nathaniel out into the street. The night was cold, stars bright overhead, the town sleeping around them. What do you want? Thomas asked, his voice shaking. I want to know why you're lying about me, Nathaniel said. Why you're spreading filth about your own daughter. I'm not lying. You are. Nathaniel stepped closer. Clara's been at my ranch for 2 months. She's worked hard. Been good to my girls. And you're telling people I bought her for something dirty. Why? Thomas's face twisted. Because you deserve it. You and your perfect ranch and your perfect life. My perfect life? Nathaniel's voice rose. I lost my wife. I've raised 2 daughters alone for 8 years. What about that is perfect? At least you have your daughters. At least you didn't have to sell them. That was your choice. I had no choice, Thomas shouted. I had debts. The bank was going to take everything. So you took the easy way out. Sold your daughter to save your own skin. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Nathaniel's voice was cold now, controlled. You're a coward, and you're trying to make yourself feel better by dragging me down, by hurting Clara. Thomas's eyes filled with tears. You let my wife die. There it was, the real reason, the wound that had never healed. What? Nathaniel asked. 10 years ago, Sarah was dying. I came to you, asked for help, asked for money for a doctor. Thomas's voice shook. You said no. Nathaniel went still. I remember now. It was winter. The twins had just been born. Margaret was sick too. I didn't have money to spare. You had your ranch. You had land. You could have helped. So could 6 other men you asked. So could the church. So could the bank. We all said no, Thomas, because none of us had extra. It was a hard year. But Sarah was dying, Nathaniel said quietly. Even with a doctor, she wouldn't have made it. The consumption was too advanced, I'm sorry, truly. But there was nothing I could have done. Thomas shook his head, tears on his face. You don't know that. I do, and so do you. Deep down you know. Thomas stood there, broken, shaking. "I lost her," he whispered. "And then I lost everything else. My business, my home, my dignity. All I had left was Clara, and I sold her too." "Yes, you did. I'm a monster." "No." Nathaniel's voice was firm. "You're a broken man who made a terrible choice. But you can stop making it worse. You can stop the lies, stop hurting Clara, let her have some peace." Thomas looked at Nathaniel. "Why do you care? She's just a contract to you." "She's not." The words came out before Nathaniel could stop them. "She's not just a contract. She's a good woman who deserves better than what she's gotten. From you, from the world, from everyone." Thomas stared. "You care about her?" Nathaniel didn't answer, couldn't answer, because he hadn't realized it until he said it out loud. But yes, he cared. Lights were coming on in windows, doors opening, people coming out to see what the commotion was about. Mrs. Calloway, the midwife, the storekeeper, the blacksmith, a dozen others. They stood in doorways and on porches, watching, listening. Thomas looked around at them, at the town that had watched him fall, watched him sell his daughter, watched him become this. "Go ahead," Thomas said to Nathaniel, loud enough for everyone to hear. Tell them what I did, how I blamed you for Sarah's death, how I sold Clara because I was too much of a coward to face my own failures." Nathaniel shook his head. "I'm not here to shame you in front of the town. I'm here to tell you to stop. Stop the lies. Stop hurting Clara. That's all I want." "Clara," Thomas laughed. Bitter. Broken. "You call her by her first name. You do care about her." "Yes, I do." The admission hung in the cold air. The townspeople stirred, whispered. Mrs. Calloway stepped forward, an old woman, respected, known for speaking truth. "I've been to that ranch," she said, her voice carrying. "I've seen Clara. She's well cared for, working hard, helping with those motherless girls. There's nothing improper happening there, just a decent man giving a desperate woman a chance." Other voices joined hers, the blacksmith, the storekeeper. "Nathaniel Kane's an honest man. Always has been. If he says there's nothing wrong, there's nothing wrong." Thomas looked around at them, at the town turning against him, at the last of his reputation crumbling. He looked at Nathaniel. "You won. This isn't about winning. It never is. For men like you." Thomas turned, started walking away, into the darkness. "Thomas," Nathaniel called after him. Thomas stopped. Didn't turn around. "Clara's your daughter. She still loves you. Somewhere under all the hurt and shame. If you ever want to make this right, the door's not closed. But you have to stop. Stop the lies. Stop the hate. Stop hurting her." Thomas stood there for a long moment. Then he kept walking, disappeared into the shadows. Nathaniel turned to the gathered crowd. "Clara Brennan is a good woman. She's been working at my ranch honestly, helping with my daughters. That's the truth. Anyone who says different is lying." He looked at each face, daring them to contradict him. No one did. Mrs. Calloway nodded. "We believe you, Nathaniel." He nodded back. Then he walked to his horse, mounted, rode out of town. I watched from my window, saw the whole thing, saw Nathaniel ride away, saw the town disperse, saw Thomas Brennan disappear into the darkness, and I knew that something had shifted, something important. Nathaniel Kane had stood up for Clara in front of the whole town, had called her a good woman, had admitted he cared. That changed things, changed how the town saw her, changed how she might see herself, and maybe, just maybe, changed how Nathaniel saw himself. Nathaniel rode back to the ranch as the sun rose. He hadn't slept, hadn't rested, but he felt lighter somehow, clearer. He'd done what needed doing, said what needed saying. Now there was just the living, the working, the slow building of something that might become a family, if they could survive the birth, if Clara and the baby made it through, if they could keep building these fragile bridges between them. When he reached the ranch, smoke was rising from the chimney. Clara would be up, making breakfast, always working, always trying to prove her worth. He'd have to tell her. Tell her she didn't need to prove anything. She'd already proven everything that mattered. Nathaniel dismounted, led his horse to the barn, unsaddled it, brushed it down, fed it. Then he walked to the house, opened the door, and found Clara sitting at the table, her face pale, her hands on her belly. "Nathaniel," she said, her voice tight, "the baby. Something's wrong." Nathaniel crossed the room in 3 strides. "How long?" he asked. "Since midnight. I thought it was false pains, but they're getting closer." Clara's face was tight. "Something's not right. It's too early, 2 weeks too early." Nathaniel looked at the girls. They were standing in the hallway, eyes wide, frightened. "Rose, Lily, get dressed. Quick!" They ran to their room. Nathaniel knelt beside Clara's chair. "Can you walk?" "I think so." "Good. We need to get you to bed. Then I'm riding for Mrs. Calloway. It's a 4-hour ride. 3 if I push the horse." He helped her stand, guided her to her room, got her settled on the bed. "You're going to be fine. The baby's going to be fine." Clara gripped his hand, her eyes full of fear. "Nathaniel, what if I die, like Margaret?" He looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd been bought and sold and had still found the strength to keep going, to care for his daughters, to make a home in this hard place. "You're not going to die," he said, his voice firm, certain. "I won't let you." Nathaniel rode like he'd never ridden before. The sun was barely up. The snow on the ground made the horse slip and slide, but he pushed, drove the animal hard down the mountain. And as he rode, the memories came. 8 years ago, Margaret in labor. Him riding for the doctor, the horse throwing a shoe, the delay, the terrible delay. He'd gotten back too late, found Margaret pale and bleeding, the doctor working frantically, the midwife's grim face. He'd held Margaret's hand, watched the life drain from her eyes, heard her last words, "Promise me they'll have a mother's love." He'd promised and failed. For 8 years, failed. But now he had a second chance. Clara wasn't Margaret. She was stronger, tougher, a woman who'd survived being sold and still found the will to care for 2 motherless girls. She would survive this. She had to. Nathaniel pushed the horse harder. The town appeared below, smoke rising from chimneys, the world waking up. He rode straight to Mrs. Calloway's house, pounded on the door. She answered, saw his face, knew immediately. "It's time?" she asked. "Yes, and something's wrong. She says it's too early." Mrs. Calloway was already moving, gathering her supplies. Her bag, her coat. "How far apart are the pains?" "I don't know." "Close. She's frightened." "First babies are often early. Could be fine." She looked at him. "Or could be trouble. We'll know when we get there." They rode together. Nathaniel's horse was spent, but it kept going. Driven by his will, his need, the sun climbed higher, the mountain road stretched ahead. And Nathaniel prayed, harder than he'd ever prayed in his life. "Please, not again. Don't take her. Don't take the baby. Please." Rose held Clara's hand. Lily stood by the door, watching, scared. "It hurts," Clara gasped, another pain rolling through her. "God, it hurts." "Papa will be back soon," Rose said, her voice steady despite her fear. "With Mrs. Calloway. They'll help you." "What if they're too late?" Clara's eyes found Lily. "What if I die? What happens to my baby?" Lily stepped forward. "You're not going to die." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Lily came to the other side of the bed, took Clara's other hand. "Because we need you. Me and Rose. We need you to stay." Clara looked at the 2 girls. These children she'd been so afraid wouldn't accept her, who'd watched her with suspicion and doubt for weeks, now holding her hands, refusing to let go. "Your mama," Clara started. "Mama's gone," Rose said quietly. "But you're here, and we want you to stay." The pain came again, harder. Clara cried out, gripped their hands. The girls didn't flinch, didn't let go. They held on, anchored her. When the pain passed, Clara looked at them through tears. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So are we," Lily said. "But we're here, all of us together." Rose squeezed her hand. "You're not alone, Clara, not anymore." And Clara understood. These girls weren't just accepting her out of necessity. They cared. They wanted her to survive, wanted her to be part of their family. She wasn't property, wasn't a burden, wasn't a replacement. She was Clara, and she mattered to them. That gave her strength, enough to breathe through the next pain, and the next, until she heard it. Horse hooves in the yard, voices. Nathaniel was back. Mrs. Calloway swept into the room, assessed Clara with quick, experienced eyes. "Girls, out. Go to the main room and stay there." "But," Lily started. "Now." The girls went, reluctant but obedient. Mrs. Calloway turned to Nathaniel. "You too." "No." She looked at him, saw the determination in his face, the fear underneath. "This isn't a place for men." "I'm staying." His voice was iron. "Last time I left. Went to get help. Came back too late. I'm not leaving this time." Mrs. Calloway studied him, then nodded. "Fine, but you do what I say. When I say it, understand?" "Yes." "Then wash your hands, thoroughly, and bring me hot water and clean towels." Nathaniel moved, did what he was told, brought what was needed. The hours crawled by. Clara labored. The pains came harder. Closer together, Mrs. Calloway checked her progress, murmured encouragement. "You're doing well. The baby's coming. Just keep breathing." But Nathaniel saw the worry in the midwife's eyes, saw how she kept checking, kept frowning. "What's wrong?" he asked quietly. "Baby's turned wrong. Might be stuck." Fear clutched at Nathaniel's chest. "What can we do? Pray, and help me when I need you." The sun climbed toward noon. Clara was tiring, her face pale, drenched in sweat. "I can't," she gasped. "I can't do this anymore." "Yes, you can," Nathaniel said. He was beside her, holding her hand, like he'd held Margaret's. But this time he was here from the beginning. This time he wouldn't be too late. "Nathaniel, listen to me, Clara. You're the strongest woman I know. You survived your father's betrayal, survived being sold, survived a winter on this mountain. You can survive this." "But what if—" "No." He gripped her hand tighter. "You're going to live. You're going to see your baby. You're going to watch that child grow up. And you're going to do it here, with me and the girls, because that's where you belong now." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Nathaniel, I need you to stay," he said. Raw, honest. "The girls need you. Your baby needs you. I need you." Another pain hit. Clara screamed, bore down. "That's it," Mrs. Calloway said. "Again. Push again." Clara pushed. Nathaniel held her hand, let her squeeze until his bones ached, didn't let go. "I see the head," Mrs. Calloway said. One more big push." Clara gathered everything she had left, every ounce of strength, every bit of will, and pushed. The sound filled the room, the most beautiful sound Nathaniel had ever heard. "It's a girl," Mrs. Calloway said. She was smiling, working quickly, clearing the baby's mouth, wrapping her in a blanket. "A healthy, beautiful girl." Nathaniel looked down at Clara. She was crying, laughing, reaching for the baby. Mrs. Calloway placed the tiny bundle in Clara's arms. "Hello," Clara whispered to her daughter. "Hello, little one. I'm your mama." The baby's eyes opened, dark and unfocused, but alive. So alive. Nathaniel stood there, unable to move, unable to speak, tears running down his face. He'd been here. He'd helped. And this time, the woman lived. The baby lived. Everything lived. Mrs. Calloway looked at him. "You can let go of her hand now." Nathaniel realized he was still gripping Clara's hand. He loosened his hold, but Clara held on. "Thank you," she said, looking at him. "Thank you for staying. I promised I wouldn't leave." His voice was rough, broken. "And I keep my promises." Clara smiled, tired but radiant. "What should I name her?" "Whatever you want. She's your daughter." Clara looked down at the baby, thought for a moment. "Emma," she said, "after my mother, Emma Brennan." Nathaniel nodded. "It's a good name." The door burst open. Rose and Lily rushed in. They'd been waiting, listening. unable to stay away when they heard the baby cry. "Is Clara okay?" Rose asked. "Is the baby okay?" Lily added. "We're both fine," Clara said. "Come meet your new sister." The girls crept closer, looked at the tiny red face, the small fists waving. "She's so little," Lily whispered. "Can we hold her?" Rose asked. "Soon," Mrs. Calloway said. "Let Mama rest first." But Clara shook her head. "Now is fine." She showed them how to support the head, how to cradle the baby. Rose held Emma first, gentle and careful. Then Lily. Nathaniel watched his daughters hold Clara's baby, watched Clara watch them, watched this family form before his eyes, not his family and Clara's baby, not two separate things, just one family, complicated and cobbled together from broken pieces, but whole. Mrs. Calloway touched his arm. "She did well. Strong woman." "Yes," Nathaniel said, "she is. The baby's healthy. Early but strong. They'll both be fine." Nathaniel nodded, couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. Mrs. Calloway packed her supplies. "I'll stay the night. Make sure there are no complications. But I think the worst is past." "Thank you." She patted his shoulder. "You did good too. Being here. Not all men have the stomach for it." "I couldn't leave her." "No, I don't think you could." Spring came slowly to the mountain. The snow melted. The creek ran fast with snowmelt. Wildflowers bloomed along the fence line, yellow and purple and white. Emma was 3 months old now, a quiet baby, content to sleep and eat and watch the world with her dark eyes. The girls doted on her, took turns rocking her cradle, singing to her, fighting over who got to hold her first. Clara watched them with a full heart. These girls who'd been strangers, who'd lost their mother, who'd been so afraid to love again. Now they were sisters to Emma, daughters to her, a family. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Nathaniel found Clara on the porch. She was rocking Emma's cradle with her foot, looking at the mountains. "Can I sit?" he asked. "It's your porch." He sat in the other chair. They rocked in silence for a while, the night settling around them. "There's something I need to tell you," Nathaniel said finally. Clara looked at him. "What is it?" He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "The contract, the one your father signed." Clara's stomach tightened. She'd almost forgotten. Had let herself believe for a few months that she was here because she belonged, not because of a piece of paper. "What about it?" she asked. "I burned it, the original, months ago, right after you arrived." He handed her the paper. "This is just a copy. The sheriff gave it to me. I wanted you to see it one last time." Clara took it, looked at her father's signature, Nathaniel's signature, the terms. 1 year of labor for $200. "Why are you showing me this now?" she asked. Nathaniel reached into his other pocket, pulled out a small book, handed it to her. Clara opened it. It was a bank book, in her name, with a balance of $50. She looked up at him, confused. "I paid your father's debt," Nathaniel said. $200. But I put aside extra, $50, for you. It's been sitting in the bank since the day I signed that contract." Clara stared at the book. "I don't understand." "You never owed me anything," Nathaniel said, his voice quiet, steady. "The debt was your father's, not yours. This money is yours. It always has been. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted you to choose to stay, not because you had to, not because you owed me, but because you wanted to." Clara looked at the bank book. $50. Enough to rent a room in town. Enough to live on for months while she figured out what to do. Enough to leave. She'd been free all along, and hadn't known it. "I could leave," she said, testing the words. "I could take Emma and go." "Yes." "You wouldn't stop me?" "No." "I'm sure," she said. "This is home. You and the girls and Emma. This is my family now." Nathaniel nodded, stood. "Then we should make it official." He walked to the fireplace. Clara followed. Emma stayed sleeping in her cradle on the porch. Nathaniel fed the contract into the fire. They watched it curl and blacken. The paper that had bound her, owned her, defined her. Gone now. Just ash and smoke. "You're free," Nathaniel said. "You always were, but now you know it." Clara watched the last of the contract burn, felt something loosen in her chest, something she'd been carrying since that day in the sheriff's office. Shame, fear, the weight of being owned, all of it burning away. "Thank you," she said. Nathaniel looked at her. For what? For seeing me, not as property, not as a burden, but as a person worth saving. "You saved yourself, Clara. I just gave you a place to do it." They stood there, the fire burning low, the spring night cool and clear, and Clara felt it. For the first time since James died, since her father sold her, since everything fell apart, she felt whole. I'm standing in the church in Settler's Ridge. It's spring. 18 years have passed since Clara arrived on that mountain. Emma is getting married today. She's standing at the front of the church, 20 years old, beautiful in her mother's wedding dress. Clara made it herself, spent months on the stitching, the lace, making it perfect. The groom is a good man, a farmer's son from the next valley over, honest, hard-working. He looks at Emma like she's the sun. Clara sits in the front row. Her hair has gray in it now, lines around her eyes. But she's still strong, still steady. Nathaniel sits beside her, older too, his beard fully gray. His hands weathered from years of ranch work. They're holding hands. Not as husband and wife. They never married. Never saw the need. But as partners, as family. As two people who built something together from broken pieces. Rose and Lily sit behind them, both married now, both with children of their own, but they came home for their sister's wedding. May we all be brave enough to stay, to build, to choose, like Clara Brennan, who was sold for $200 and became priceless.